Welcome to Rolls-Royce's defence business here at Bristol in the UK. My name is Nick Frank and I work with international manufacturing and technology businesses to help them get more value from their services. We've come here as part of a set of interviews that have been organised by the International Society of Service Innovation Professionals, that's ISSIP for short. The goal of these interviews is to share best practice between practitioners and thought leaders in how services are increasingly supporting companies in achieving long-term sustainable growth. Rolls-Royce are a leading British manufacturer, but what many people don't realise is in fact over 50% of Rolls-Royce's revenues actually come from service. For example, in the civil business, they now deliver what's known as power by the hour, where customers pay literally for the time that they use the engine, and this helps them get this cost of service off their balance sheet. No longer do customers purchase an engine and then maintain it themselves. They take out quite advanced and sophisticated contracts with suppliers such as Rolls-Royce, and they actually only pay for that engine as they use it. This has completely revolutionized how the engine business works, but also has had a significant impact on the business models of their customers, especially the low-cost airlines. We're very fortunate to be able to talk to Dave Gordon about their service journey and what their vision is for the future.
My name's Dave Gordon. I've been at Rolls-Royce for 4 years. During that time, initially focused on our aftermarket business and really trying to create a strategy as to how we were going to grow that business and leverage some of the core capabilities that exist both within our defence sector but also right across the company. And to that end, we've looked at developing a number of capabilities which we'll talk about today. Currently, I'm the Programme Director for the Joint Strike Fighter Lift System. We like to say we put the lift into the F-35B, and those that are looking at this site will be able to see just how that works so impressively, as we'll be debuting that system at the Farnborough International Air Show during the summer of 2014. So Rolls-Royce within defence, I guess if we look at a journey over the last 10 to 15 years, we were a fairly traditional provider of the service. We sold a product, we sold a very time and material based service solution. It was very driven by the customer and their management of our product, and they would call on us for spares, etc. And it became clear to us that that wasn't the best fit for a lot of our customers. During the introduction, Nick talked about the journey that our civil business went on, and indeed civil themselves saw a very strong pull. It actually came from American Airlines, who approached Rolls-Royce and said, we would be far more interested in you providing a solution that kept your engine on wing, and we incentivise you to do that, than rather than incentivising you just to maintain it as a product. So we worked very closely with that customer and developed a total care solution that very much focuses on that end-to-end need. And during that process, Rolls themselves has gradually taken more of the risk and more of the responsibility for managing those assets as we became more and more confident in our ability to do that. Within defence, we've taken some of those core tools and processes and embedded them into our own value sort of offering to our customer. And we use particularly the UK customer as a testing house to work with them. They themselves were going through a major transformation, looking to downsize the scale of their operation and drive efficiency. And we were very much up for that journey as well. So very much in collaboration, we went about introducing a far more availability-based solution. It's been very successful. We see it now embedded on our Tornado program, on the RB199 engines. We also do it on the Typhoon, on our EJ200 engine. And then as we look to the future, we're starting to work with the customer to see go beyond just an availability solution and say, well, what's really disrupting that customer's operation? What's really stopping them doing their job? And getting to the point where they don't even think about my propulsion system, they're just focused on prosecuting their operation. And to do that, we need to understand a little bit about the nature of the disruption and what we can do to help. I looked both within and with outside defence and outside of Rolls Royce to look at what good looked like. I was kind of keen to bring in best practice, but I was also conscious that we were doing some very, very good things that we may not be perhaps celebrating or capturing as much as we might. We were also starting to birth some concepts around different centres. So we'd already introduced something called an operations centre or an ops centre, which is very much the day-to-day tactical management of the fleet. We man that facility with engineers, people with a lot of services experience, people with a deep knowledge of our products, who are able to give a responsive sort of solution to customers who can literally ring in like a call centre but get a very thorough service as a result. Underpinning that operations centre is data. And the other piece, as I was looking at what's our strategy, it was, well, how are we going to manage this data? Because we access a huge amount of data through our product, both in terms of actual on-engine prognosis and also information we gather on the asset and the fleet as it accrues many, many hundreds of thousands of hours in many cases. So how do we use that data? How do we use the expertise in our people and wrap some process around it? And we came up with this idea of operations centre, data centres, a business centre which we now run to look at the long-term strategic use of those products. And as a programme director, I now sit within that business centre. And then looking to the longer term, we've taken all of those ideas and in particular how we use our data, and we're starting to push that a lot closer to our customers where they're comfortable to do that. I think as we've been on this journey, and it has been a journey over many years, it's not something that's happened overnight, we've built a very strong relationship with a number of key customers, and it is relationship based and it's trust based. And we've had to open ourselves up to scrutiny and be very open with how we're using that data and how Rolls-Royce delivers that service. And I think in return, the customers got a lot more comfortable with the fact that we will protect their information. Clearly in a defence context, having that management of that data in a way that each customer is comfortable that it will not be taken anywhere else is very, very key. And that was actually one of our motivations, particularly within the defence business, to actually get a lot closer to our customers so we could control the management of that data in a way that's both they're comfortable with and also provides for a very collaborative environment so that we can get the benefits and synergies of having both us as the provider and the original equipment guy and the customer as the user and the knowledgeable person on how that asset's actually going to be used, right in the same room, sharing knowledge, building experience together, and hence being able to take that value proposition, if you like, to the next level in a way that we're both comfortable with. In terms of demonstrating the value and the customer seeing the value, there's two ways I think I'd answer that. First of all, around how we build metrics around it. So when we develop an availability service, we're very clear in terms of the level of service we're going to provide. Typically these days that's well into the 90%, that's the expectation. And then we build deliverables around that and frankly measure it in a way that makes it very transparent, the level of service we're providing. I think where it really comes home though is when the systems that we're talking about get tested in a really challenging environment. And we built something called a service delivery centre. So we built our first SDC actually at RAF Marham where that customer was operating from. So we took a lot of this thinking around availability solutions, data, took the ops centre concept and effectively exported it into the customer's facility, all very much with their both permission and requirement, frankly, work with that customer and say, well, let's look at the goodness that has come out of this relationship and see whether we can actually formalise that and build some infrastructure around it to continue to take it to the next level. So disruption-based availability, or sometimes we also call it Project Zero, so zero disruption to the customer. And again, this is something that both us in defence and our colleagues in civil have been very focused on. So understanding that it's not just about guaranteeing the engine time on wing, but it's actually understanding when the engine does have an incident that causes some disruption to the customer. It may be as minor as a delay in being able to take off, but that clearly has a cost. And what we've been trying to do is work with our customers and understand very clearly what that cost is. And the benefits of that are both a tangible one, where we can build an offering around that and say, well, we understand the impact on that cost, and therefore if we're able to reduce that, we can develop that into a value proposition. But also there's an intangible piece to that as well, because it helps me to motivate my teams to understand the exact impact that that event's going to have on a customer, and the fact that it has repercussions way beyond not being able to take off. It will feed back into the impact that has on the operation and the planning that went into it and the need for contingency planning, etc., etc. So understanding the whole ecosystem, if you like, that sits around not just my product but the system it's working in and how the customer's using it, and then understanding how we can reduce the impact. As I say, it both, you can clearly demonstrate the value to the customer, and we're working with them to do that, but also it's a real motivator for me as the team really starts to understand what customer service actually means. So I think the success of these kind of solutions is they're customer driven. If you've got a enthusiastic, we had some early adopters in the process, both in our civil business and in our defence business, and they then become advocates, as I say, for this, and others who look at it, particularly in a defence environment. If people are operating our products in similar systems and they can see that one guy's getting a better availability than the other, then human nature is they'll want to understand why that is. And the fact that we've been able to develop these tools and processes that are very repeatable and very robust, so that we can have more and more confidence that we're going to be able to deliver those solutions and actually model a customer's operation, because they're all going to be different. So we've also had to be able to learn how to actually model individual customers and how they're going to use stuff. And when we're able to get into that space and build that trust with them, that's really where the success has come from. Ultimately, it's resulted in the customer themselves seeing a reduced cost of ownership, which in today's market is incredibly important. Affordability is probably the number one requirement on any customer's list, frankly. And therefore, if we're able to deliver solutions that tick that box, that's probably what's really driven the success. In the early days, we didn't do things at a whole system level. So we did break things up in bite-sized chunks. Typically, we can break an engine down by modules. And we actually focused on a particular module and worked with a customer and said, well, let's just see if we can improve the availability of this. It's going to need us to understand your piece of the operation. We actually need to really understand what you're doing with it. And then we need to open our books up as well and show you how that flows into what we're trying to do. As we've gone through that process, we've built a real database of both understanding how the products get used, but also some fairly sophisticated modelling capability that allows us to play tunes on those operations, and as we expanded it to a whole system level and then looked at different scenarios as to how it was going to be used, we've built more and more capability that allows us to, as I say, model that and really understand it. What we can then do is take that kind of template, if you like, and apply it to the next product or the next system, and leveraging the data set that goes with all of the portfolio to date. Also, I think the other key piece is understanding, we've talked a bit about data. Of course, you start to learn about how your customer's behaving, not in a, in a very good way, in terms of how they're using your product. Previously, you might have had an expectation of how the product is going to be used. Now you can very, very much understand exactly how it's getting used in practice and tailor the solution to better meet that demand. And typically that behaviour will be replicated over a range of your products with a particular customer or a particular type of customer. So again, understanding how the product's going to be used and how that customer behaves has allowed us to better tailor solutions to them. And then if we look at a similar customer in a different market, we can take that idea. But I guess the other key piece to point out is one size does not fit all, and I think where some may have been unsuccessful in the past, and something I'm very, very conscious of, is I never go to an existing or new customer and say, this is, have I got something for you? The starting point is, tell me about your operation and tell me about how you use my product or my competitor's product in very general terms, to start to build that real understanding of what they want to do and then get a feel for the kind of service they're going to want as a result. So designing for service, or we as part of our overall journey into the services space, we've not surprisingly developed a number of processes that sit around that. And right at the front end of that is design for service. So we're very focused now on, as we better understand how our projects are going to be used and we can better predict how they're going to be used. And when I talk about creating our future, it's very much about being able to better predict and position ourselves to take advantage of what that's likely to be. Then designing those products for that service has become key. And things like prognostic health management, where you can actively take data off the engines whilst they're actually in flight. Things like asset management and fleet management, where we're looking at aggregating that data and using it to really understand how the fleet works, how certain things, lifing behaviours change, and how we can therefore change the limits and constantly evolve and better service our customers. All starts from thinking about the application and how we can use it. Segregating data is critical, really, and we do it in a couple of ways. So clearly for each customer, we very much partition the data sets, and we control the environments in which that is shared extremely carefully to all the standards that you can imagine. In terms of how we then read that across and leverage it and learn from it, clearly we can genericize it and take it up a level, and the sort of solutions I'm talking about, we're talking about general overarching use of information. So we are then able to sanitize it, if you like, in a way that protects the source and make sure that we never share things outside of where we should. As I say, going forward, as we look at this service delivery concept that we're very keen on, and the ability to establish centres actually based with our customers, that gives us yet an even better, almost physical way of protecting that information, that again makes the customer a lot more comfortable. And I think whilst clearly there are many systems today that allow us to protect data with a lot of integrity, nonetheless our customers are always rightfully going to be concerned and suspicious of how things are going to be used. So if we're able to very clearly show that, I think that's important as well. In terms of the future, we've clearly been on a journey. It's been a very successful journey. It's very successful from a business perspective. It's already been noted, it's now more than half of our business is being generated in this way. We obviously want to keep our position there, and we're not so complacent to think that what works today is going to work in the future. I talked a bit about disruption-based availability. We're in the early days of that. Again, it's a journey. We're working with some key customers in collaboration to understand how we measure it and how we develop a value proposition around that. And whilst doing that, we're looking at, well, where does this go next? And we're starting to talk about something called dispatch availability, which is when the aircraft goes on, rolls onto the runway and is ready to go, we absolutely do not want any issues associated with our engine causing that not to happen. So ensuring that that customer, when he wants to or she wants to, can take off and do their thing is the ultimate goal for anything that we want to do. And we're looking at that as a sort of logical end state, if you like, in terms of the ultimate in availability and developing solutions that take us in that direction. But it's going to be a bit of a journey because to some extent it's working with our customers and getting them to really understand what's at the heart of their operation as well, and get them to step back from almost telling us what they want and working with them to understand what they really want to be and where they want to be, and developing a solution around that. I talked at the beginning of the interview around we used to be in the time and material space, and a lot of our customers are still there, and to be fair, a lot of them are very comfortable in that space, and they're very comfortable keeping the totality of the operation very close to them. And our challenge is to work with them and maybe show them that by introducing a bit of flexibility around that, we think we can drive a huge amount of value out of that operation and ultimately get them to a point where they can do a lot more with a lot less. But absolutely, the need to take the customer on that cultural journey in a very joined up way, not in a lecturing or patronising, but very much, as I said earlier, sitting down with them and understanding, well, what do they really want to get out? What makes them tick? What's important to them? What are the key drivers? And building something around that does need them to be prepared to come on that journey as well. I'd like to think we've always been fairly customer focused, and certainly the brand says a lot around that. I think that the difference is how far we've pushed that into the business. So clearly in the day-to-day dealing with the customer, that's a space that we're very comfortable with. But how we've then messaged that back right into the guys in the back office who are driven by various priorities that are coming from a business perspective as well, and bringing through that message of the impact of what they're doing on the customer, I think is something that we have been pushing really hard, and is starting to really give dividends, which gives me the confidence, because in order for me to go out and talk with customers and have confidence that we can deliver the kind of solutions that we know they want, we've got to have confidence in the team that's going to deliver it. And having seen that message getting far deeper into the business, I think is quite rewarding actually, and is going to be very important going forward. I guess I am personally a bit of an innovation enthusiast, and fortunately innovation is very much in Rolls-Royce's DNA as well, so it's a good fit. But it's always fun to try and push the envelope, I guess, and see where we're going to go, particularly in a business that's quite traditional and one that works in global markets, etc. We've talked a lot about data, and one of the things I did with my team was around looking at how we could use emerging technologies to try and better exploit the data. At the time, I'd become a bit of an enthusiast for an iPad, and was finding it was enabling me to do my job in a better way. And we started to think about whether we could use that to help our customers as well. And to that end, we developed a suite of apps it was done on the Apple platform because it was one that we were familiar with, and very much started off, if I'm honest, we started in a marketing space, but very, very quickly moved it into the services space. So I talked earlier about understanding our customers and their needs, and we developed an app that was built around a questionnaire. And the questionnaire itself derived from looking at what good service looked like. And my service engineers and guys were able to very easily tell me the various attributes of the service. So I asked them to reverse engineer it into a question set that might take a customer to different service levels depending on their appetite. And we built an app around that. And then we later started looking at how our customers were managing fuel, which is again a huge cost driver for all of our customers all around the world. And the fuel management app we developed was the first time we actually started to use data that we collected on our products that could bring to life how on a whole variety of different operations how it would have been possible to deliver the same outcome but flying with a lot less fuel and not impacting safety, etc. The thing I loved about the app, it was very visual, and B, it was quite new, so it captured people's imagination. And ordinarily, it would have been a nightmare getting it approved in terms of how we fight it through our corporate IT process. But I guess in capturing my imagination, I also captured the imagination of my board as well, who took a huge interest in it in terms of what we were doing. And there's no doubt that whilst I may have ruffled a few feathers along the way, that did force it through, and we were really, really pleased with the results. And with a couple of key customers, we actually rolled that out and started to use it in the field. And it's worked extremely well, and we're now looking at the next generation of what was frankly a prototype, pilot type operation to see whether there was an appetite for it. And as I say, I think as back to the cultural shift, our customers are getting more and more familiar with using tablet devices and mobile devices, so it's entirely logical that we should be moving into that space as well. But yeah, a very fun way of driving innovation through a business and showing that there is a different way you can do things, almost disrupting yourself, to use the cliche. But it was. We did disrupt our own operation before others did it, and learnt a lot along the way. Rolls-Royce has very much focused on what's made it successful, what's right in its DNA in terms of what it does well, and combine that with listening to the customer and getting very intimate with the customer. So taking our sort of innovation approach, which is we've been doing for 100 years on engines, and taking that same thought process and applying it in services. But clearly, rather than us coming up with an innovation and then trying to take it to market, I think the services piece has been about being innovative, but then going out and listening to customers and saying, well, what do you actually need? Let's really understand your operation. Let's build on our relationship and get down to the real nuts and bolts of what drives your outputs and how we both impact on that and where we can add value. And I think that combination of innovation and listening to the customer has taken us to where we are today, and is absolutely going to take us where we need to go tomorrow as well.